My true story, from Florida. My husband returned after 47 years. I received his death certificate from the Vietnam War, but I found a shocking secret. It was my grandson's 16th birthday. The house was crowded, loud, full of cheap streamers and louder opinions. Someone had ordered barbecue from a chain restaurant, and the smell of smoked meat mixed with the synthetic vanilla of air fresheners. Plastic cutlery clattered, kids screamed about a new gaming console, and country music played too loud from a Bluetooth speaker no one wanted to claim. I sat in the corner of the living room, alone, just where they preferred me to be. The couch cushion had a dip where I had sunk in too often, and the light from the windows did not quite reach that far. I was holding the same box I had held every day for the last 47 years. It was small, made of dark oak, with a brass plate that read, William T. Ransom, beloved husband, 1948-1976. The corners were worn from time, and the lid had a hairline crack across it. I had never opened it, never dared to. It had been sealed by a man I never met, sent with a letter from William's closest friend, and hand-delivered by a uniformed officer who never looked me in the eye. They told me William died in 1976. A military training accident in Nevada, non-combat incident, a vehicle fire. He was declared dead in connection with service linked to the Vietnam War. There was no body. The remains were non-recoverable. All they sent me was this box and a folded flag, though even the flag felt like an apology, not a tribute. I carried the box like it was part of my spine. It had moved with me from our first house to the rental I barely afforded after his death, then to this house, the one I bought myself, paid off slowly, nail by nail, while raising 2 children alone. Michael and Rose. 2 lives, 1 widow, and a lifetime of pretending that silence was strength. She's still carrying that damn box? Michael muttered from the kitchen. Ma, he's dead. Let go, I heard him. I always heard him. Maybe, if you'd been more of a wife, Linda said, pouring boxed wine into a red plastic cup, he wouldn't have driven off that night. If I ever go crazy, my granddaughter added, never lifting her eyes from her phone, just put me down before I become her. I held the box tighter. Not for them, for me. It was the only thing in this house that had never lied to me. The party went on around me. They lit candles on a cake shaped like a baseball. The children sang, the adults drank. Someone took a group photo and cropped me out. I heard them laugh about it later. I didn't say a word. I remembered the last night before the military came. William had left in a hurry, saying he was needed for final deployment preparations. He kissed my forehead and said, "Be strong." I never heard his voice again. The next thing I knew, David Miller had written to me, saying the accident was quick and painless, said he saw it happen, said William never felt a thing. I believed him. I had to. Now, I sat in a house full of people I raised, treated like a ghost, while the box sat like a weight in my lap, too heavy for one old woman to carry, but too sacred to set down. Linda passed behind me with a tray of mini cupcakes and muttered, "This is a party, Ma. Could you put that thing away?" "It is my husband," I said softly. "He was my father-in-law, 47 years ago. He's not coming to the party." More laughter, more forgetting, or maybe it was intentional. I watched Michael toast his son with a cheap beer, watched Rose refill the chip bowl in silence, and realized how far I had drifted from my own blood, how lonely the center of a family could feel. Then the doorbell rang. A real ring, not a knock, not someone trying the handle, a full 3-beat ring like whoever was on the other side expected to be answered. Everyone paused. Michael raised an eyebrow. "Who the hell comes by uninvited?" "Probably another neighbor asking about the parking," Linda muttered. I stood. No one stopped me. My legs ached, but I had walked harder miles in worse shoes. The box stayed in my arms. I would not leave it behind, not even for a second. I reached the door and opened it slowly, and there he was. William, older, wrinkled, thin. His beard was patchy and his hands trembled, but his eyes were unmistakable. They were not the eyes of a memory or a ghost. They were real, alive. The room behind me gasped. Someone dropped a plate. Linda said a curse word I had not heard since the funeral. The box slipped from my hands. It hit the hardwood with a sickening crack. The lid popped open. A soft cloud of ash spilled onto the welcome mat. Michael stared in horror. My granddaughter screamed. I looked down at the ashes I had carried for nearly half a century. Then I looked up at the man who had let me believe he was dead, and with a voice I had not used in years, I asked him one question. Then, who the hell did I bury? December 1976. The morning sun broke over the rooftops of our small Missouri neighborhood like any other, except that it did not feel like morning to me. The house was too quiet. William had been deployed again. Vietnam, they said, but with a logistics unit stationed stateside. I clung to that detail like it meant he was safer. Then the letter arrived. It came in a Department of Defense envelope, thick and heavy in my hands. The return address read, Casualty Notification Branch. My breath caught before I opened it. Staff Sergeant William T. Ransom has been confirmed deceased during combat travel associated with operations linked to the Vietnam War theater, it read. Non-recoverable fatality, vehicle explosion, identification confirmed through circumstantial evidence, no physical remains, no signature, no rank, no name of an officer. No one took responsibility for that letter. 3 days later, another package arrived by private courier. No military seal, just my name written in faint ink, and inside a box, dark oak, a brass nameplate. William T. Ransom, 19481976. Attached was a letter, handwritten in blue ink on plain stationery. It was from David Miller, William's old army buddy. Helen, it began, I write this with the heaviest of hearts. I was the one assigned to identify what was left. The explosion left no recognizable remains. It was quick, painless. I took the liberty of handling the cremation per his standing wishes. He always said if anything happened, to make sure you were spared from seeing it. I'm sorry, he was a good man. David Miller, a name William mentioned once or twice, but never with detail. I never met him. He disappeared after that letter. No return address, no follow-up. I tried to find him years later, but there was nothing. Still, I believed him. Because what else could I do? I had no body, no grave to stand at, no folded flag ceremony, just that box, that letter, and a house that suddenly felt too big and far too silent. Michael was 10, Rose was 8. I told them their father had died a hero, that he died in service to the country, in the line of duty. I wore black. I wept in the dark. I pressed my face against the box at night, whispering his name. I never remarried. I never dated. The idea of letting another man near me felt like betrayal. William was gone, and I was married to his memory. I pawned my wedding ring to pay the gas bill that first January. I started cleaning houses during the day, offices at night. My fingers cracked from chemicals, and my back screamed every time I bent over, but I never stopped. I could not afford to stop. I never asked for help. Michael grew up resenting me for it, said I cared more about a ghost than my living family. But what he never understood was that I worked not for William's memory, but because I had no choice. No husband, no pension, just 2 mouths to feed and a box of ashes that no one else wanted to claim. I kept that box on the mantel. When the children moved out, it went on my nightstand. When I downsized to a smaller house in Florida, it came with me, wrapped in bubble wrap, carried on my lap during the flight. I wouldn't let them put it in the luggage. There were nights I'd sit up in bed, whispering to it, pretending he could hear me, pretending he missed me too. I thought maybe, somehow, he'd seen the children grow up, that he was proud, that he would have done the same had the roles been reversed. I was faithful to the end, not just to his name, but to the idea of him, the idea that someone had loved me so deeply, even death had not erased it. For 47 years, I never opened that box. I dusted it, I polished the brass plate, but I never opened it. Not out of fear, out of reverence, until the day he showed up at my door, until the day that box fell open, and I saw the ashes spill across the welcome mat like a cruel joke, and I remembered the unsigned letter, the no-return dress package, the lack of ceremony, the lack of official anything. All these years I believed the lie because it came wrapped in silence. And now, as I stared into the face of the man I had buried in my heart, the only thing more painful than his return was realizing he had never truly left. He had just disappeared. And he had made sure I could never follow. He stood there like nothing had happened, like he had not erased me from his life, left me to bury a stranger's ashes and raise 2 children on my own. William T. Ransom. My husband. My ghost. He wore a beige jacket that hung off him like he had borrowed someone else's body. His shoes were worn through the soles, his beard had gone gray, patchy, unruly. But his eyes, they hadn't changed. Cold, sharp, too clear to belong to a man with no memory. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stared at him for a full minute. Then, without a word, I stepped aside. He crossed the threshold and walked past the spilled ashes, past the stairs of my son and granddaughter, and into the house he once owned, the house he left me to build, inch by inch, paycheck by paycheck. Rose didn't speak. She stood in the hallway, watching from a distance. Michael followed William like a child shadowing his father. His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. We all sat in the living room, William in the recliner, his old chair, the one I had refused to throw out. I on the couch, Michael by his side. William cleared his throat. "I know this is difficult to understand. I lost my memory after the explosion. I wandered for a while, lived off the grid. Then I started to remember. Faces, names, this house, you. It was rehearsed. Too clean, too calm. You remember now?" I asked. He nodded solemnly. "Yes, and I'm sorry," Michael jumped in. "It's a miracle, Ma. We thought he was gone forever. But he's here now, and we can start over." "Start over?" I repeated, my voice like sandpaper. William reached into a folder and pulled out a stack of papers. Deed copies, tax records, property value assessments. "This house," he said, "was bought in my name. Before I left, I never signed anything transferring ownership." "Because you were dead," I said flatly. "Legally presumed," he corrected. "But now that I'm back, we need to talk about selling the house. Splitting the proceeds. I have debts, legal fees. I'm not asking for everything, just half." I stared at the man who had left me a widow, who had let me believe he died in service, who had watched from wherever he was while I scrubbed toilets and cried myself to sleep for decades. Michael added, "We've been paying the property taxes the last few years, Ma. You're just living here." I turned slowly toward him. "You knew?" He looked away. "You knew he was alive." He did not deny it. "I met him 2 years ago," Michael admitted. "He tracked me down. He needed help. He said he wanted to make things right. By selling the only home I have left?" My voice cracked. "This house is all I've known. I bought it. I paid for every beam, every tile, every repair, while you were, what, playing dead?" William sighed. "Helen, I understand your anger, but the law is the law. I'm not here to fight. I just want what's fair." "Fair," I whispered. 50-50, Michael said. "Simple math." I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, not from weakness, but from restraint. I had imagined 1,000 times what I would say if he were still alive. I had prayed for him to walk through that door, but not like this, not carrying legal folders and a smirk. "I buried you," I said. "I held ashes and cried over you for 47 years. I raised 2 children while working night shifts and selling my wedding ring. And you want half." William said nothing. I stood. My knees ached, but I stood anyway. "You will not take my home," I said. "You will not take what I built from your absence. You walked away from this family, and you will not walk back in with a pen and paper." Michael scoffed. "You can't stop him. The house is in his name." "Then take me to court," I said. "Let a judge see what he left behind." William leaned forward. "Why make this ugly, Helen? We were a family once. Let's be civil." "You were a family once," I replied. "Now you're just a man with papers, and I'm a woman with a memory." I did not sleep that night. I sat in my kitchen with the folder William had left behind, copies of business filings, birth certificates, company logos stamped on letterhead, bank account statements under the name Will T. Ransom. I watched the shadows of the ceiling fan spin slowly overhead as I read and reread every page. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant echo of a party muffled behind closed doors. By morning, I felt a cold, clear certainty. I was not hallucinating. I was wise. I drove to the county clerk's office with that folder. I asked for every business registration connected to William Ransom or Will T. Ransom or any similar alias. The clerk handed me several bound printouts. One crossed my eyes with its complexity. A logistics firm incorporated in Texas in 1982. Partner, Judith Ann Miller, co-owner, 2 children listed in public school births. The company records showed profits, property buys, car leases, real estate transactions, all dated far past 1976. My husband had not disappeared or suffered memory loss. He had found a new life, under a new name. Back home, I stood in the doorway of the guest bedroom, once mine, now used for junk storage. I spread the papers across the bed. Income statements from trucking contracts, mortgage documents for a house in Austin, Texas, birth certificates of 2 children with the same last name. And somewhere in that folder, traces of David Miller's handwriting, notes about corporate filings, bank wire transfers dated 2005 in Judith's name. His handwriting, the same that had comforted me after sending the box of ashes. I closed my eyes, the weight in my chest tightened. Memory was optional. Betrayal was not. That evening, I invited William over to talk. He arrived, pale and nervous, clutching the folder he'd brought before, as if he expected to continue negotiating. I laid a new folder on the table, the mystery folder. He looked at it and tensed. "I found your company," I said. "In 1982, 6 years after you died, you registered Will T. Ransom Trucking in Texas. Partner, Judith Ann Miller." He sighed and ran his fingers through his thinning hair. "Helen, I needed a fresh start." "So you lied," I replied. "Pretended to die, disappeared, collected insurance, started over, had a wife, 2 kids, a house you never told me about." He stayed quiet. "What about the ashes?" I asked, voice flat. "The box I carried, it came from a crematorium in Nevada. Anonymous, unclaimed remains." I tapped the folder. "The certificate is not tied to any name. It's ashes of a stranger." He closed his eyes. "That was a mistake. Deliberate." I slid one of the business records toward him. "David Miller helped you set this up. He cremated someone else's remains and sent them to me." He blinked, surprised. "He never had permission," I continued. "He falsified a death, claimed to be your friend, all so you could leave without a trace." William swallowed, his face reddened. "He worked with you," I said. "You used him. You used that stranger's ashes to build a lie." William looked away. His jaw tightened. "Why?" I asked softly. "Why fake your death?" He looked at me then. His eyes were heavy with guilt. "I died to be free," he said. "Free from debt, from responsibility, from this life. You lived to be a servant, cleaning, caring, crying over a man who was never gone, who never died." I felt bile rise. He had the audacity to claim I had served his memory instead of living my own life. "That was not service," I said. "That was survival." He leaned forward. "Who's really to blame, Helen?" Anger rose in me, not ugly, not desperate, cold, disciplined fury. "I'm to blame that I believed your story," I said. "I believed the letter. I believed the box. I believed in you." "But I left," he whispered. "I gave you everything, a name, a life, 2 children. Through lies," I replied, "through betrayal. You abandoned me, you buried me alive." He shook his head. "I was lost." "Not lost," I spat. "Focused. You remembered the money, you remembered the escape, you remembered how easy it would be to disappear." He rose to leave. "I am sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," I said. "I want truth. I want justice." He paused in the doorway. "What do you want?" I stared at him. "I want you gone. From this house, from my life, and I want what's rightfully mine." He looked at the folder, then back at me. His expression was hollow. It was the last time I saw tears in his eyes. I had spent decades thinking that grief was the hardest thing a mother could carry. But betrayal digs deeper, especially when it comes from your own child. After William's return and our confrontation, I noticed Michael began hovering, checking on the deed, asking about taxes, suddenly involved in matters he had ignored for years. His concern felt rehearsed, like a script he'd memorized too well. One afternoon, I went through my old lockbox, the one William never knew I kept in the back of the linen closet, wrapped in a threadbare quilt. It held documents, receipts, deeds, old tax records. But it also held a ledger I used to write down expenses in the 80s and 90s, trying to make sense of the chaos. Flipping through, I saw something odd. A bank transfer from a joint account Michael had opened in 2003, receiving monthly payments labeled WR Trust, William Ransom Trust. The deposits were regular, identical, in amount, more than a child would send a struggling parent. It wasn't support, it was a payout. I pulled Michael's old laptop from the hall closet, one he'd left behind years ago. It barely powered on, but it still worked. And in an old email folder I found them, email threads between Michael and willr62@outlook.com. Make sure she doesn't suspect anything, one email read. Keep her busy until I can file the paperwork. Another, she's too stubborn, you'll need to pressure her. And the most chilling, get her into assisted living. That's when we can sell. I sat at the kitchen table, reading every message hand over mouth. They had planned it for years. William's grand re-entry wasn't an accident. It was the final step in a long con. My own son, the boy I raised, the child I fed with coupon dinners and school clearance sales. He had sold me to my past. For a payout. When Michael came over that weekend, I watched him closely. He moved through the house with entitlement, casually opening drawers, eyeing the walls. He was casing it. I confronted him in the kitchen, calmly. How long? I asked. He blinked. What? You've been working with him for how long? His mouth tightened. That's none of your business. I found the emails, I said. I found the bank records. He didn't deny it. He didn't flinch. You're old, Ma, he snapped. Step aside, me and Dad'll take care of the rest. I recoiled. Take care of what? The house, the assets, your future. He leaned in. You're not fit to handle this stuff anymore, and honestly, you're lucky we didn't act sooner. My chest burned. I raised you. And you raised me alone, he snapped. That's not noble, it's pathetic. We grew up with nothing, all because you clung to a man who left you. Well, he's back, and it's time he gets what's his. What about what's mine? I whispered. He laughed. This place? You've just been squatting. He pulled papers from his jacket, a power of attorney, unsigned, but prepared. Sign it. We'll take care of everything. We'll even find you a good place. One of those nice facilities with a garden? I stared at the pen. I didn't reach for it. From the hallway, Rose appeared, silent, watchful. Michael turned. Don't start, Rose. You said you were with us. She said nothing. He waved the papers. Ma, sign them. You're tired. You're confused. I stood. I'm angry. And I'm awake. He rolled his eyes. This is ridiculous. You're living in the past. I looked him square in the eyes. The past is the only reason you're standing here. I worked 2 jobs. I pawned my ring. I buried a stranger. For you? He scoffed. You were weak. No, I said. I was strong. And I'm still here. That makes me dangerous. Michael clenched his jaw. Last chance, Ma. Sign. Rose stepped forward. And I said, loud enough for the whole house to hear, no. I used to think silence meant agreement, that when my daughter stayed quiet through Michael's rants and William's return, it meant she had chosen their side. I mistook stillness for betrayal. But Rose had always been the quiet watcher, the one who saw everything, even when she said nothing. The night after Michael demanded I sign away my rights, Rose came to me. She did not knock. She simply walked into the kitchen, where I sat in the dark, fingers shaking around a chipped porcelain mug. She sat across from me and placed a small USB drive on the table. What's this? I asked. Proof, she said softly. I stared at her, unsure. I knew something was wrong, she began. The way Dad came back, how Michael treated you like a problem, not a person. So I did what you taught me. I listened. She explained that months ago Michael had tried to recruit her, to get her to help manage Mom's decline, as he put it. He thought if Rose was on their side, I would be easier to control. She played along, smiled, agreed to their plans while secretly recording everything. I wore a mic, she said, at lunch meetings, at the house. Every time they spoke freely, I was there. I picked up the USB, it's all there. Audio, documents. The signed agreement transferring your house to Michael if you were deemed incompetent. A fake letter from a doctor. Even the bank trail. I swallowed hard. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I had to wait, she said, until they showed their hand. I looked at my daughter, the girl I once bathed in a plastic sink tub, who cried the night she lost her first tooth. She had grown into a woman of quiet steel. They thought I was on their side, she said, but I'm on the side of truth. Tears burned behind my eyes. I thought I lost you. You never did, she said. They just made too much noise. That week I found a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. A seasoned litigator who specialized in elder fraud and property recovery. I handed him everything. The USB, the emails, the fake death documents, the forged medical notes. This is enough to bury them, he said. Good, I replied, because I buried myself for 47 years. We filed for an emergency injunction. The house was frozen. William and Michael couldn't touch a single penny. Their accounts were reviewed. Subpoenas went out. The news hit Michael like a thunderbolt. He came storming into the house 3 days later, eyes bloodshot, rage on his lips. You set us up? He screamed at Rose. She stood her ground. You tricked your own family? No, she said. I protected mine. He turned to me. How could you do this? We're your blood. I stood behind Rose. You made me your victim. I made myself your witness. William called that night, left 3 voicemails. The last one was him crying. Helen, don't do this. We can fix it. I came back for closure. I deleted all 3. The court date was set. My lawyers smiled. They'll never see it coming. And they didn't. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Pale marble floors, blue-gray walls, a faint smell of dust and disinfectant. I sat with Rose at my side, her hand gently resting over mine. Across from us sat William and Michael, both in suits that didn't fit them right, too big in the shoulders, too tight around the gilt. The judge, a sharp woman in her 60s, read the opening statements with a tone of barely veiled disdain. My lawyer presented the evidence, the forged documents, the recorded conversations, the falsified medical assessments. When the audio played of Michael laughing about just shipping her off to a memory care unit, the courtroom held its breath. William avoided my eyes the entire time. Michael, for once, had nothing to say. By the end of the second day, the outcome was clear. Mr. William Ransom and Mr. Michael Ransom, the judge said, you stand accused of elder exploitation, fraudulent misrepresentation, attempted unlawful transfer of property, and falsification of legal documents. The court finds the evidence irrefutable. She turned toward me. Mrs. Helen Ransom, your resilience is commendable. This court hereby restores your sole ownership of the property in question, awards you 70% of all identified marital and business assets, and declares Mr. William Ransom and Mr. Michael Ransom permanently disqualified from any future claims on your estate. I squeezed Rose's hand. She smiled, tears welling. The gavel fell. William let out a low sigh, like a man exhaling his last lie. Michael slumped, hands clenched. Their empire of deceit, built on the bones of my silence, had collapsed. But the real victory came weeks later, when the sheriff came to enforce the eviction. William stood in the living room, now stripped bare of everything but dust and memory. Michael was already gone, run off to another state, trying to escape the shame that followed him like a shadow. William packed slowly. One photo frame, a jacket he hadn't worn in years, a bag that held more regret than belongings. I built this place, he muttered once, just loud enough for me to hear. I stood at the doorway, arms crossed. No, I said. I did. He turned to me, eyes swollen. Helen, don't let me die out there. This house, it's the last thing I remember of who I was. I stared at him. This man who once held my hand under the stars, who then vanished and left me to carry the ashes of a stranger. This man who returned only when the house had value. Please, he whispered, and slowly he dropped to his knees. Let me die here. I said nothing, just watched. Watched him zip his bag. Watched the sheriff lead him out the same door he once walked through 47 years ago and never looked back. Not a word passed my lips, because some silence is louder than any goodbye. That night, Rose and I sat on the porch. She handed me a cup of tea. No more boxes. No more lies. Just 2 women under a wide Florida sky, free. They're gone, she said. Good, I replied. Let them stay gone. _. I live, with Rose now. The house is the same, but everything feels different, quieter, softer, like it finally exhaled after holding its breath for 47 years. Every morning, I sit on the front porch, the same one I used to scrub with a toothbrush when we could not afford a mop, the same porch where Linda once told me I was embarrassing her guests, where Michael once said I did not belong. Now it is mine. The sun hits different here. It doesn't ask questions, it just shines. William died 2 months after the court verdict. No funeral, no obituary, no tears. He passed in a halfway house outside Tallahassee. Alone, a man who orchestrated his own resurrection, only to find that the world no longer had room for his lies. The staff called me. I declined the ashes. Michael was arrested 6 weeks later. Fraud. Exploiting elderly women online. The same crime he tried to commit against me. The same people he mocked, called weak, called crazy. His mugshot made the news. His eyes looked hollow, like he had finally seen what he truly was. He tried to call Rose. She blocked him. He sent me a letter. I burned it. Some things deserve to be ash. The house, though, this house, has become a sanctuary again. The garden Rose tends is filled with lavender and basil. She says it helps her sleep. Sometimes I catch her staring at me like she's still afraid I'll vanish. I'm not going anywhere, I tell her. Not until this porch breaks under me, she smiles. Last week I opened the old trunk in the attic. Inside, beneath the folded flag and his fake obituary, was the dark oak box, the one I once cradled like a relic, the one filled with lies. I brought it downstairs. I placed it gently in the fireplace. No flames, just placement, just truth. I taped a note to the lid. You chose freedom. I chose memory. Now, I have both. And then I walked outside. The door creaked shut behind me. I sat in the porch chair, the wood warm under me, and I looked out at the sky. No shadows, no footsteps, no knocks. For the first time in nearly half a century, I wasn't afraid of what might be on the other side of the door, because I already knew. It could never be worse than what had already left. The seasons change more slowly now. Rose planted marigolds beneath the kitchen window this spring. She says they're for protection. I told her I don't need protecting anymore, but I let her plant them anyway. There's a peace in watching something grow from nothing, especially when you know how much of your life was spent clawing through ashes. We do not talk about William much. His name is not forbidden, but it no longer echoes through these rooms like a ghost in old boots. I think that's what death really is, not the stopping of a heart, but the ceasing of someone's hold over your life. I still sit on the porch every morning. I still drink my tea out of the same cup, the one with the chipped rim and faint outline of a rose that never faded, no matter how many times the dishwasher tried to erase it. Some days neighbors stop by. They call me Ms. Helen and ask if I need anything from the store. One of them, a younger woman named Camille, told me her own mother was taken advantage of by her brother. She asked how I found the strength to fight. I told her the truth. I didn't start with strength. I started with silence. But silence collects interest over time, and one day it pays back in full. There's a small photo of me and Rose by the fireplace now. We took it the day after the verdict. She's smiling. I'm not. But not because I wasn't happy. I was just full. Full of something I hadn't known in years. Closure. As for the box, it still sits in the fireplace. Empty now, not in shame, but in warning. I leave it there as a reminder to myself that grief can be manipulated, that love, if blind, can become a leash. But memory is a knife that cuts both ways, and I finally learned how to use it. One evening, as the wind knocked softly at the window pane, Rose turned to me and said, "Do you ever think he loved you, even a little?" I paused, then said, "I think he loved himself first, and maybe at one time there was room for me in that. But love without loyalty is just vanity." She nodded, and we left it at that. The door, the one William once stood behind when he returned, is still there. Same wood, same handle, but I do not fear it anymore, because I know who I am, and I know who will never cross that threshold again. The world forgot me once. My family tried to erase me. But I remembered every detail, every bruise made of words, Every silence I turned into steel. And now, they remember me. Not as a widow, not as a burden, but as the woman who held a box of lies and still walked out stronger. If this story stirred something in you, if it reminded you of your mother, your grandmother, or maybe even yourself, then I want you to hold that feeling for just a moment longer. Let it sit with you. Let it echo. Because this wasn't just a story about betrayal. This wasn't just about a man who left and came back, or a son who forgot what love should look like. This was a story about something many of us know all too well: silence. That quiet kind of pain that doesn't scream for help, that doesn't fight back right away, that just waits. For the longest time, Helen, like so many women of her generation, believed that love meant enduring, that loyalty meant never questioning, that sacrifice, if deep enough, would one day be remembered and repaid. But sometimes the world forgets women like Helen. Sometimes it praises the loud ones, the brash ones, the ones who take without asking, and it leaves the quiet ones behind, the ones who cleaned floors while others slept, who skipped meals so their children could eat, who held their pain in the folds of their skirts, in the cracks of their hands, in the quiet between heartbeats. But silence is not weakness. Silence is a ledger, it's a record, it is memory itself. And sometimes, silence becomes the sharpest kind of justice. Helen didn't scream. She didn't throw punches. She didn't beg to be seen. She simply waited, watched, remembered, and when the time came, she stood tall, not just for herself, but for every woman who was ever told she was too much, too old, too emotional, too forgettable. She showed us that revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it comes with facts, with a court order, with dignity, with a final no that echoes louder than any cry for help. And maybe, just maybe, you saw something of yourself in her. Maybe you've been underestimated, talked over, left behind. Maybe someone in your life made you feel like you were past your prime, like your time was over. Let me tell you now, your time is not over. Because the truth has no expiration date, and neither does justice. At Grandma True Stories, we tell stories like Helen's, not because they're easy, but because they matter. These are the stories that don't make headlines, the ones that happen behind closed doors, in quiet kitchens, on front porches where no one thinks to listen, but we listen. And we share them, not for pity, but for power. Because every woman who speaks her truth becomes a lighthouse for the next one. So if you believe in that, if you believe that the quietest woman in the room might just be the strongest, then I invite you to stay, to subscribe, to listen, because more stories are coming. And when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens.